Hi, welcome to Watch Jelly. My name's Alvin. We haven't done this for a while. So thank you all for watching our channel again. To restart this series, I have one of my good friends, I guess at work, Wayne. Wayne, I mean, he's dressed up in a very fancy outfit. So naturally, you can sort of tell, and with the cups, I guess, as well, you can sort of tell what fields we're in. So Wayne is a colleague of mine, and let's just say he's. We're sort of in the same broad department, but at the same time, I guess his work is a little bit different from what I'm doing. So Wayne, welcome to Watch Jelly. Thank you for agreeing to do this.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
And I love your place. So we're filming at Wayne's place right now, and swanky place. If only I could show you, but. Then again,
maybe next time.
Yeah, maybe next time.
Maybe.
Yeah, wouldn't be great. Yeah, but so Wayne, we're about the same age. He's a bit younger than I am. So he has some interesting watches as well. I think he has the stories to back it up as well. So I think that's something to really have a chat about this period. So maybe for a start, maybe Wayne, you could just tell us a bit more about how you wound up here. In terms of. Because you and I we're both Singaporeans.
Yes.
We both grew up here, and we're in the east side of Singapore. That's where we grew up.
Yep.
Which is east side, west side, if you know what I mean.
I agree.
Yeah. So west side, take a walk. So I would say we sort of had similar upbringings. Went to sort of similar type of schools. And then just briefly tell us how you wound up. Where we are colleagues right now. Where did it start from? I guess. Middle school, high school, into your career right now in banking.
Yeah, for sure. So again, thanks for having me. I think where it all started, born and bred in Singapore, grew up here. Most of my years went to middle school, high school, all in Singapore, and then NS, like every Singaporean guy.
National service.
Kind of the rite of passage, I would say.
Yep.
And then after that, went to the UK, London for university. Wanted to get out of Singapore and see kind of what's out there. Right. I think that has always been kind of a longer term goal of mine, to really experience places beyond what I was used to step out of my comfort zone, try something new.
Right.
So I ended up in the UK, London, spent 3 years there in uni. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I was already getting interested in the field of economics.
Okay.
Out of all the subjects that were taught in school, I think that one kind of jumped out at me the most. It felt the most alive on a day-to-day basis when you watch the news, when you read about things that are happening. It felt very dynamic.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that kind of drew me into studying economics there. And naturally, I was looking for types of jobs that allowed me to do economics. So, right. Yeah, it led me to look at finance as a field. It led me to also consider academia, to be like a research person, to be a professor, that type of thing. Right. So it could have gone either way. But I think finance, being in that environment, a lot of people around me were also going into this field. So there was some level of peer pressure. There was some level of, this is very interesting, and I can, do quite a lot of exciting work in finance.
So if I may interject here for a bit.
For sure, yeah.
So, I think a lot of these stereotypes, Asian parents, they want you to do something along the lines of business, be a doctor, a lawyer. So economics, I think for some Asian parents, some kids will even say, my parents sort of emotional blackmailed me into it. But so you're trying to say that this is a genuine interest of yours after touching the subject?
Yeah, I would say it's a genuine interest of mine, simply because I think it's hard to describe exactly why, but I just felt that felt like the thing I could apply the most. Okay. We learned a lot of things in school, and I feel like often it's hard to apply a lot of it, but economics was a field where I feel like, I could actually use my knowledge and try to interpret what's happening in the real world. Right. And that was very appealing to me.
No, I totally agree. I think that the good part about us is that we have both worked in Hong Kong before, or are still working in Hong Kong. I think some of our colleagues who are not from Singapore have actually told us, damn, you guys actually started learning economics, taking the subject economics in high school, in junior college in Singapore. So I think that was an advantage that really, I would say, even for me as well as a student, I found economics in school even at a relatively surface level, much more interesting than mathematics and biology or physics. I mean, those were interesting subjects. I mean, again, no diss to all you physicians out there. Physicists out there, physicians. Sorry, what am I saying? And doctors out there. But I think economics is sort of you had that sort of sociology component to it. I think it's also linked to politics.
Yes.
But we're just looking at it from a more like a national, I guess, like you said, the economy of a country and how that, I guess, intrinsically links to politics, cultures. So I think I totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, if not for the fact that it became a lot more of a drier subject in college, and very much data analytics driven, which is fine. I guess if we're just looking at it from purely as a study, I think I might have gone on the same route as you went down.
Yeah, kind of on that point. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I didn't end up going into academia.
Right.
It started feeling like if you wanted to do that, it became very dry. It was very theoretical. You had to deal with all these like theories and papers and things like that. So I was like, okay, like working in the field of finance and potentially public policy, like I think these fields was a lot more dynamic. You applied what you learned to real world issues. So that drew me into this field.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's why we wound up working in the same place, right? And it does pay the bills as well, I guess.
It does. It does.
Swanky apartment, let's not forget. So I hope you don't mind making fun of
No, that's fine.
So if any of you watching out there, you know what we do, yeah, there you go. I think that's one reason why. So for me, I also look at FX, commodities a lot. So I guess all these are generally more macro type of the macro side of capital markets. Mm-hmm. And I would say that I was at a young age, I also had sort of a similar outlook in terms of how that influences markets. Yep. So maybe my scope of work is also linked to economics to a degree, but maybe a bit more on the numbers and I guess the more finance part of it, which is after a while it gets a bit boring, but it is what it is. Yeah. So then I suppose after college, then how did you journey your way back into? I guess we were working in a pretty nice outfit ourselves. Just not to bang on too much about it, but how would you say your working experience has shaped you? So as you said, you moved from college as a subject, then you moved into a finance type role. So how have you found it so far in your few years of working in this?
I think the role allows you to kind of apply what you learn in general.
Right.
Obviously, that's not the whole part of the job. I think with any junior type of role starting out in finance, you have to accept that there's going to be some type of admin or manual labor type of thing going on. And that's just going to be part of the job, right? I think a lot of people, they experience that and they feel like they want to get away from it. They don't like it. But I think it's just part and parcel of any type of junior role starting out in a competitive industry like that. And I feel like this is something you have to learn to do well,
right,
in order to move beyond. I'm not saying that you should be hazing like every new joiner or whatever, right, but it's just more of like, I think it's something that someone needs to do the work. And it's going to fall on the most junior person. Right. So you're going to have to learn it, do it well, and move beyond that.
Yeah, it's called paying your dues, right?
Exactly.
Exactly, paying your dues. I mean, if you don't start from the ground up or the more nitty-gritty manual stuff, it's hard to really pick up any, or sort of gain the 10,000 hours required to be good at your role.
Yeah.
So I think for all you guys out there, young punks, I mean, we both of us were young once. He's younger than I am. I think don't be impatient. You need that 2 to 3 years where you just really have to hustle and do all the dirty work, as you would call it, before you gain any sort of I guess advantage or know-how, right?
Yeah. So once that's done, right, out of the way, kind of about 2-3 years in, you start getting a lot more interesting work to do. You start to get more independence. You start to get more freedom to look at what's out there in terms of the data, in terms of the news, a lot of noise. And then you apply what you learn, apply kind of your methodology, your skills into solving problems for your stakeholders, your clients, into coming up with your views to have that kind of more creative output, which I think is now I'm getting into that phase of the job, and it's becoming a lot more interesting.
Right. So maybe to touch on briefly, hopefully you're comfortable with this subject. So I guess you worked in Hong Kong for a few years. You moved back here fairly recently.
Yes.
I have worked here. I've worked in Hong Kong for a bit. So how would you maybe just briefly sum up working in Hong Kong, Singapore, and I guess maybe without getting too much into the more political side of it, but maybe in terms of the broad environment and maybe to a certain degree the culture, the company culture. Yeah.
For sure. I mean, this is a watch channel. I'm not going to go deep into politics. But I think that the whole reason I went to Hong Kong to begin with was just, again, to experience something beyond what I was familiar with. I wanted to not come back to Singapore immediately. I think there's a lot to be experienced living elsewhere, working elsewhere. And I did find that in Hong Kong. But obviously, I don't think timing-wise, maybe not the best time to have gone to Hong Kong.
Right.
First couple of years were good, 18, 19. And then when COVID started with the pandemic, things became more difficult there in terms of your freedom of movement, mobility, and what you can experience there. So I think in terms of the difference in culture, I feel like in Hong Kong, I would say 3 points. First one is much faster paced than Singapore.
For sure.
Some people kind of are quite incredulous when I say that, but I do think it's a faster pace, especially if you have experienced it yourself. Point number 2, I think because of that, it's also more stressful. Right. I think there are a lot more stresses that you experience living and working in Hong Kong in terms of the competitiveness of the landscape there, in terms of just needing more resources to kind of enjoy a high quality of life in Hong Kong. Because many things are scarce in Hong Kong. Surely everyone knows about how tight the space is, the living conditions. So it demands a lot more out of you in order to live comfortably in Hong Kong. And I would say point number 3 is just that Hong Kong is also, maybe this is a slightly more positive point, is it feels more dynamic. It feels like there's a lot more going on there. And even if that equation has shifted over the past couple of years because of what has happened in Hong Kong in terms of the restrictions, I still feel like Hong Kong as a market, as a place for your career, it is very dynamic. A lot of interesting people, interesting work is being done there with relation to China, but also with the rest of the world. And I feel like that is still an experience which is worth exploring in Hong Kong.
For sure, yeah, I definitely agree. I think now Hong Kong is opening up as well. So I think deep down, as much as the first 10, 12 months was tough when I moved, I think now it's a lot more open. You get to plan things now, and you get to travel. I think one of the more amazing things is being able to travel to different parts of mainland China, which I will thoroughly enjoy. I hope to enjoy, knock on wood. And and I think most people I talk to say, Hong Kong most likely either you're staying 2-3 years around that period, or you're going to stay there 8 years, 10 years or longer. So I think for all of you keen to move to Hong Kong, if you're especially single, you're not super tied up, I think Hong Kong is certainly a place to visit for a few years at the very least, to explore. Also, a bit of a contrast to Singapore, not quite I would say a one-to-one substitute for sure.
Oh, it's definitely not. I think a lot of people, when I kind of tell them that, I from Singapore, I work in Hong Kong, some people who haven't been to either place, I haven't spent a lot of time there, they will be like, oh, it's kind of the same place. Yeah. And I'm like, no, they're very, very different. I think the lifestyles each city offers is quite different. Yeah. Right. In Hong Kong, people talk about the nightlife, they talk about the nature opportunities to kind of go out there with the hiking, with the water sports, and obviously accessibility to China. I think all of those things you are not able to get in Singapore, but Singapore offers something different, right? In Singapore, it's a slower paced life, maybe more suitable for families. If you like things slower paced, kind of in general.
I guess for you as well?
For me, myself personally, I find it to be a better fit for my own lifestyle. Right. So I think there's going to be something for everyone. It's not going to be for everyone for both cities, but I'm sure depending on what you're looking for, I think either city can offer you what you want.
Got you. So I absolutely agree. So certainly, depending on lifestyle, I guess you don't want a situation where you have droves of people moving into one location, which is what we're sort of facing a bit now in Singapore. So hopefully that will ease with Hong Kong opening up. I guess we don't like our country being too full. I think we don't like the congestion and everyone having squeezed in one space. So please, those of you looking to move out of Singapore, feel free. Yeah, doors wide open. So maybe we can talk a bit about watches. I guess we both. I don't know, man. I don't know how it started for you. So I suppose when I started interacting with you more at work in Hong Kong, where we first started working closely together, I guess the topic of watches sort of just came up, right? And for better or for worse, right? I mean,
I hear you talk about watches, right? Like it's hard to avoid. I think in the office, and you will bring it up, and I see what you're wearing.
Do I bring it up?
You do bring it up sometimes, and I see what you're wearing on the wrist. You know, it changes every day.
Okay.
So I'm like, wow, this guy is probably into it.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. No, I think watches are one of the few things that men can really wear out. I think, and apart from cufflinks, tie clips, whatever. But I think it's a statement piece for sure. So we have two watches on the table today. So I guess with everyone knowing a bit more about your background, your upbringing, and sort of how you think as a person, generally speaking. So what are some of the watches that the two of the watches you have here today? Let's talk about the first one. I guess let's talk in order that you received it.
Sure.
So this one, I guess even for me, sorry about that. Okay, for someone who spends a bit too much time on YouTube, reading articles, blogs, etc., magazines, I personally have not come across this brand. It's Maurice Lacroix. Lacroix.
Maurice Lacroix. Yeah.
So it's something that you received, you said, from your family. So you want to tell us a bit more about this piece, yeah?
Yes, for sure. So this piece, Maurice Lacroix, I'm not exactly sure which reference it is. 6507, if I remember rightly. So this one, I got it when I didn't know too much about watches. I knew kind of from a younger age, maybe in high school, that I liked the look of watches. Okay. I like how diverse they were and how it is, maybe like you mentioned, one of the pieces of jewelry that men can wear out.
Right.
And I felt that's pretty interesting to me. I looked at it casually, but not in detail.
Right.
So this one my parents got for me as a gift when I turned 21.
Okay.
And it's the first, proper watch I got, because the previous ones were, I'm not saying they were not proper. I had, your typical electronic Casios and things like that, your G-Shocks. Yeah. But this was kind of the first, maybe more expensive, a higher value one.
Yeah, it looks to me to be an annual calendar. Oh, it tells the day. It tells the date.
It's day and date. Yeah. Yes, no annual calendar, but it's a day and date.
Okay.
With the days of the week around the outside, the date on the inside. I think it's an interesting watch, and my parents kind of bought this for me, knowing that this is something that I might potentially need for occasions going forward.
Right.
Right, and so more formal occasions. Let's say I'm attending, meetings, interviews. Did a lot of those in uni.
Yeah.
So I think it's and they kind of looked at me and what they knew about my personality.
Right.
And they felt that this was a good fit.
Right.
Right. So this is kind of like a more moderately priced Swiss-made automatic watch, and they felt that this is like a good value item you could get for me to help me along.
Right. So I assume this has gone with you during your university days, your interviews, your internships.
Yes.
And I guess even client meetings early in your career.
It did. Yeah, so early on, I think this is very nice, kind of dressy, very simple, not too flashy, easy to wear for most occasions.
Right.
So when I'm dressed like this, going for interviews, all those meetings, all those internships, this was kind of the watch that was there for me. And I think it worked in most, if not all, of those situations.
Yeah, I think coming from parents as well, from your parents,
yes.
Basically becoming an adult. And for us Singaporeans, most of us turn 21 when we finish national service or military service.
Yep.
And then we enter into the next phase of our life, which is tertiary education, university and whatnot. So I would say, I'm sure this has a lot of memories with you. I'm sure you met your current partner wearing this watch at some point as well. So,
yeah, probably. Yeah.
So I'm sure there's a lot of memories from you receiving this one. So that's amazing. So as I mentioned your partner. So you want to tell us more about the second piece, the Grand Seiko on the table.
Yes.
So this is a fun one. So tell us about it. Tell us.
Right. So the Grand Seiko. So this was the first kind of maybe more proper, again, I use the word proper very loosely, but kind of a higher value piece that I decided to buy for myself.
When did you get this?
I got this in December last year, so just a few months ago.
Right, okay.
Pretty fresh, and that was the first, and I bought it in Japan.
Okay,
right,
yes.
At the Wako store in Ginza, which is the flagship Seiko boutique.
In Tokyo?
In Tokyo.
Okay.
Yes. So For me, I think I like many others, I started reading more into watches during the pandemic. There was this huge boom in like watch content, people getting interested in it.
Right.
And I did kind of get caught up with it a little bit.
Right.
So I read more into different types of watches, what's out there. And Grand Seiko kind of was one of the things, the brands that stood out to me.
Okay.
And there's even a deeper history behind this one, because
Alright.
this actually goes all the way back to uni. In uni, in my final year, some people started a watch club in uni.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So some people started a watch club, and one of the events they organized was a visit to a boutique,
Right.
where one of the boutique managers would speak to us about different brands,
Right.
their history, just give us a very high-level overview of the watch landscape.
And you were part of the book club, the watch club.
The watch club, I wasn't a big member because they started it pretty close to when I graduated, so I didn't
Okay.
have a lot of time there.
Okay.
But I attended this one event that they organized, and we went to the boutique. It was somewhere in London, I think Watches of Switzerland in London,
Right.
one of the boutiques. And obviously they featured a whole bunch of different brands,
Right.
and one of them was actually the Grand Seiko.
Right. So what about? So did they sell you? Did they convince you on the visit itself, or was it something about the brand ethos and the way that it was marketed that sort of got you interested in coming back to this brand?
I don't think they were trying to sell us watches. I mean, we were college students looking at pretty expensive things
Right.
at the time. But I remember seeing this exact one, the Snowflake.
Okay.
And it stood out to me because it had the prettiest dial. Because as a simple person, it was kind of like looking at how it looks like. From the
Right.
very get-go, I felt like this was a piece of jewelry that is to be worn.
Yep.
And I think it needed to look good. And the dial just looked good to me. Like the Snowflake, I think it was one of the most unique dials I've seen out there.
Right.
And then they were explaining the mechanics of the spring drive. I'm not going to try to do that.
No, neither
but
am
I
I.
found that to be extremely interesting from an engineering perspective.
Yep, it is.
So that just kind of stuck with me. I didn't go deeper into it because clearly I wouldn't be able to afford one back then. But this had always been at the back of my mind. Like, oh, this is very interesting. It's made in Japan.
Right.
Not Switzerland, which was kind of a rarity.
Right.
And this just stuck with me for a while.
So for those of you tuning in, not very familiar with what the Grand Seiko spring drive is, maybe I can just deep dive a bit. Still relatively high level, I'm not an expert. So Grand Seiko, they started, I think with the spring drive, it's sort of like an electronic based movement, sort of quartz movement, but it's based off of kinetic energy. And so what happens is that this technology, unlike most automatic watches, like most automatic watches, it also provides you with the second hand a clean sweep. And I think the good thing about spring drive is that it's one of the things that really sets Seiko apart from a lot of the other Swiss brands, automatic brands. And I think Grand Seiko, you go to any YouTube video, any article, they will tell you that Grand Seiko, whether it's a spring drive or the high beats that they're releasing in recent years, in terms of that $5,000 to $7,000 bracket range, is probably the best bang for buck watch you can get. In terms of the way that it's finished, the quality of the materials, the movement, and in terms of just the finishing of the polishing on the steel case. So like dollar for dollar in that $5,000 to $8,000 range is perfect value. It's fantastic value you can get.
Yeah, but I only kind of found out about that value part of it later in like the journey.
Okay.
And kind of going on from like the college side. Another thing which maybe I can share is that my partner and I, we have always been very interested in Japanese culture.
Right.
So just because we love things like games, like anime, like manga, all of those things kind of drew us closer to the culture.
Right.
And I think just learning more about what they do, kind of their craftsmanship, kind of the whole ethos, the philosophy behind a lot of the craft kind of work that they do, that also drew me into Grand Seiko. And obviously they do a good job marketing it. They kind of spend time talking about it a lot. And that's kind of one of the things that sold me on the watches as well.
So before I forget, I think you bought this watch to commemorate something as well, right? So maybe you want to share with everyone. You bought this in December, but it's also to commemorate a live event of sorts.
Well, many things happened last year.
Right.
Got married, bought my own place, which is the place we're in right now.
Right.
So I think just to commemorate these events happening, it was a tumultuous year. Coming out of COVID, but getting all of these things done remotely as well, because I was still working in Hong Kong back then, and all these are being done in Singapore. So it's kind of like to reward myself for like a year of having accomplished these things. I felt like, yes, let's buy myself a timepiece that I can be proud of, that I care about.
Right.
Yeah, that I truly wanted to get.
So that's cool. So basically, it's a round off a really tough and commemorate obviously your marriage and
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. And then the kicker on top of that is that we used to travel to Japan like maybe twice a year pre-COVID. Twice a year, simply because I liked it so much. We have a lot of friends there, a lot of things we want to do there, so we kind of go quite regularly. But obviously during the pandemic, borders were shut.
Right.
We couldn't go there. So that trip in December was the first time we went in 3 years.
Right.
And I felt like that was also like a special moment. We're back in one of the places which makes us really happy. And I think buying this watch over there in the flagship store,
right?
The Seiko, kind of the old building on Ginza, that felt special.
Especially with the Waco on the clasp itself.
Yeah, so on the clasp, this was something that they did for me at the store. It has Waco engraved on the clasp, and that is only available if you buy a watch from the Waco store in Ginza at the Seiko boutique. So that is like a special touch on top.
Yeah, and I remember you said also that when you were there, primarily a lot of Singaporeans in there for whatever reason. Even though we know that a lot of Hong Kongers have been rushing to Japan during that period, apparently Singaporeans know where the good stuff is at. So I'll leave you with that point.
Yes.
So I think, okay, so before you bought this piece, so we were talking about watches for a bit already.
Yeah.
So what would you say is, assuming money is not a big issue, what would you say is then the next one or two watches that you are keen to look at? Assuming you have some spare change, and let's say that there's one watch that you're eyeing that's like, okay, that maybe is also a sort of an end game type watch, or at least the next piece that you're looking at. So what would that be?
Well, I mean, my spare change probably won't be enough to buy like a nice watch like this, but I mean, there are some that I have in mind.
Okay.
I think one of the ones that is more on the immediate horizon, which was also part of the Grand Seiko kind of offering.
Right.
I have the reference number here. Again, I'm not an expert.
Damn.
Reference number SPGM 239.
Okay.
Or the 22 or the SPGM 221.
Is that the high beat?
That is not the high beat.
Okay.
It is their GMT.
Oh, okay.
It is the GMT watches. It doesn't come with spring drive. It's one of their other automatic movements.
Okay.
Again, very dressy GMT without the bezel. Kind of a similar ethos to this, where it's like an extremely low-key, kind of simple GMT watch. So I can show that to you later. Okay. Maybe you haven't heard of it.
You just stare at the screen. I'll probably add a picture of it.
So there are two versions. One is like the original, which is apparently pretty popular. It's like it has a cream-colored dial.
I know which one you're talking about. Okay.
Yes, with the blue GMT hand.
Right. Okay.
That one, and then the other one is actually a collaboration with Hodinkee, which is a variation on that model with different colors, slightly different materials, with a metal bracelet.
I think I saw that on the Revolution video that Ben Clymer was on. I think I know which one you're referring to. And in any case, just look here. I'll put the picture here. So,
yeah, with the power of editing.
Right. So
yes.
Okay, cool. Then
is
that it? Anything else? Rolex? I know it's there. Tell me.
Yes. I mean, as an end game watch, but it's not something I'm looking to do to get immediately. It's kind of like, okay, do I really need it at the moment? I don't think so. Okay. But do I need it in the near to medium term future? Maybe. Right. So obviously this guy has been wearing his Daytona to the office.
Who?
The man right here. And then I see it. We did a watch swap. I've tried it on before.
Right.
On various occasions. I think it's pretty cool, right? Like for a lot of people, that is the Grail watch, like the end game watch. And I feel like that is definitely, it plays, again, it's extremely versatile.
Right.
You can wear it with anything, and that's what I like about it. It's not flashy. Right. As you can tell, I'm not flashy kind of guy. Right. These types of watches work for me. And I think the Daytona is probably the most wearable out of the Rolexes for myself.
Right.
And I feel like that is probably on the horizon as one of the potential options.
Cool. I'll keep you updated on the prices so that you know, so that you'll find the right time, as we do in our workplace, find the right time to enter into a trade, that sort of thing. So, okay, great. That's amazing, Wayne. So appreciate the time you have, and thank you again for agreeing to come and watch Jelly. So thank you guys for watching. Wayne is one of my colleagues of mine who I've met and befriended over the last couple of years, and Thanks for coming on the channel. And for those of you who have not liked, share, and subscribed, please like, share, and subscribe. Watch Jelly on YouTube. We are at watch.jelly on Instagram. And also, please, for those of you listening to us on the podcast or who want to listen to us on the podcast, we're on Spotify. I think you can search for us. It's called Such Podacity, as usual with the puns. Yeah, and this is searching for Watch Jelly, you'll find us. So thank you guys. Appreciate the time. Alvin here, signing out.